one of the books that you've written that is most famous, the foreword to the entire book is a letter written to you and signed by Muhammad Ali.
You call me up once, twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, and we just sit there and talk about life, about everything.
What's up, guys? Today's guest is a world-renowned teacher, author, martial arts Hall of Fame inductee, and the founder of the modern-day White Lotus Kung Fu system. Please welcome to the JAMCast my father, Mr. Douglas Lim Wong.
Hi, everyone. How you doing?
What's up, Dad? How are you?
Great.
Man, I say this on every episode, but this is a very, very special episode for me for a lot of reasons, as I'm sure everyone will obviously see. I've been wanting to do this one for a long time, and more than anything, I think this is going to be so impactful for so many people around the world that you've had an impact on, whether it's through martial arts, people that are stuntmen now that we'll probably get into a little bit later, but also this is a great way for us to just like put down your history for our family.
Yes, it's be very good history today, talking about from the beginning all the way to the present time.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. When I talk to people, I'm always humbled when people tell me that I've accomplished a lot in my life at my age. But when I really think about it, I'm like, man, you guys have no idea what my parents have gone through to get to the point where I have these opportunities. And so I think this will give people a really good glimpse into why I feel like I haven't done shit in my life, to be honest with you. I feel like I was handed it on a silver platter, and people will soon realize from the start of your story of why I'm so thankful. So,
yes. Well, let's start from the beginning. When I was born, December 7th, 1948, I was named after General Douglas MacArthur from World War II, the general that led the freedom to the Philippines.
Because you're born on Pearl Harbor Day.
Yeah, I was born on Pearl Harbor Day, and my mom didn't speak any English at the time, so they had to have a name to put on the birth certificate, and so the nurses named me Douglas after General MacArthur. So it was Douglas Lim Wong on the birth certificate. Lim is just like a family name. For my Chinese name, says Jiao Lim. That means I'm the oldest. Then my brother Curtis is Fu Lim, and my youngest brother Frank is Dong Lim. So okay. Lim is how it's put in the middle, so I get to use it as the main title in the middle name. So the other guys have to use Fu and Dong, so they can't use Lim.
That's why Curtis F. Wong. Okay, that makes sense now. I didn't even know that. Look at this shit. I'm 35 years old. I just learned this right now. That's really crazy. And I think what people don't realize is you made it so simplified by saying you were born in the hospital, but Grandma and them came over from China in order to allow you to be born here in the States.
Yes, they came over on the boats. They said a slow boat from China, and that's how they came over to the United States. My dad went back to China to find a wife and found my mom there, got married there, and then they came back to the United States, and they had another ceremony while they were here in the United States. And I was raised in what was called South Central. Even back then, I was born behind Jefferson High School, and that's all was known as the Southern League. So I've always been associated with those schools. But in the Southern League was Jefferson High School, Washington High School, where I graduated, L.A. High School, Dorsey High School, Manual Arts, and so those are all part of the Southern system that we did all the football and playing all the sports and so forth. So I was raised in the L.A. area, born and raised here, and moved out of here for a couple of years, lived in Denver and in Sydney, Nebraska, but came back here to live.
And so let's be really honest, though, like just pull back the veil. For those that don't know, the cities that he named and the high schools he named are not in the best neighborhoods in the world. For lack of a better term, you were born in South Central Los Angeles, which is, still to this day highly associated with gang culture and violence and a lot of areas that aren't very well off in a financial term,
yes. Back in those days, it was, as we know, as called Watts.
Yeah.
So that's when it happened. We were there. Well, let's go back. When I was born, we were born next door. We lived in the house next door to my aunt and uncle's grocery store. It's like 55th and Hooper, Hooper, not Hoover, but Hooper. And I was in the neighborhood. They own a neighborhood grocery store. Okay. And so I was born there. So I was born into the grocery store business. You know, I worked that for many, many years. I mean, for there in the beginning, as a kid, I was learning to put up stock on the shelves and stuff like that. And my aunt and uncle had that store. My dad worked there. And then later on, my dad decided to go to Denver, Colorado, and open up a restaurant there. And so we had two restaurants, one in the city, Denver, Colorado, and one in Grand Lake, Colorado, which is a summer resort. So we had two different restaurants we were working at. So we got to see the Rocky Mountains, going out there, checking all Mother Nature, you know, and it was great. But what I didn't like was the snow.
Yeah.
It was cold.
It's raining today in Los Angeles, and we were both like, this is not nice. We are glad we don't live in Seattle, you know.
Yeah, but I don't miss the snow. I mean, it was fun in a way, but, you know, a couple of times where we were going to school, and my brother Curtis fell into a snow drift. Took us almost a half hour to try to get him up out of the drift. It was so soft. And then other times, you know, we're going to school, you know, it would be 5-6 foot high snow. I mean, we had to climb up the snow to get into the schoolrooms.
Crazy.
We got snow wind many times in the house where it covered the window. You couldn't get out. They had to come dig us out. So, you know, to the door. So, I mean, it was one level house. So if we had a second level, we could jump down, but, you know, being a snowdrift, you can't get out. So, I don't miss the snow that much. I enjoy looking at it, you know, playing with a couple days if I go on vacation to Idaho or Colorado. But other than that, no, I will not live there anymore. Here, Southern California, that's where it's at.
And now, obviously, you guys were in Denver for a certain amount, but I do know you relocated back here because you went to George Washington High School eventually.
Yeah, my dad, after we had the restaurant in Colorado, then they moved to a smaller city called Sidney, Nebraska. And that's where they had a small restaurant there next to the railroad. And all our Chinese organization or family was out of North Platte.
Okay.
So that is over there. They had what's called a Fong's Cafe. That's the oldest restaurant in Nebraska, over 100-something years old. So it's still in existence. They closed it down for a couple years now, so I'm not sure who owns it now, who's running it, or if they even reopened it. But we were there. Then my dad decided to come back to California, brought a grocery store from our friend Johnny DePinto, and that was a store on 115th and Avalon in Watts. So we were there, and we came back in 1957.
And that's Bing and Mary's grocery store.
Yep, that's when we started a grocery store. We were there until the Watts Riots of 1965. So,
and just linked into that, obviously, the question that I have to ask, and I think it ties into the martial arts as well, is from a racial standpoint, what was it like growing up in that area during that time? I mean, obviously, it's a very predominantly African-American city and population. Were you one of the few Asians, or was there a large Chinese culture? Or
no, at the grocery store, most of the businesses in the area in South Central were owned by the Chinese people at that time. So there was a lot of different stores all around. Those are the businesses that were going on. Later on, the Koreans moved in and so forth many years later. But the beginning, it was the Chinese folks that owned a lot of the grocery stores in the South Central area.
wow.
I went to school at 116th Street schools. Asian, it was just me and my brother. We were the only Asians in there, and a few white folks in there. It was mostly all black at that time period. They all became a lot of my friends I still see when we go like our 50-year high school reunion. Some of these guys I've known forever.
Crazy.
You know, but during the riots, our store was the first one to get looted and burned.
Yes, and for those who don't know what we're referring to the original Watts Riots of 1965, which predates the ones with Rodney King later in the 90s.
Right. Yeah, that was the first one and the big one.
Yes.
You know, so the Rodney King thing was nothing compared to the original Watts Riot. And I went to school with a lot of these guys. So, you know, we're talking about 116th Street School, then went Henry Clay Junior High, and then George Washington High School. During summertime, I went to Dorsey High School and Manual Arts for summer school. So I was always in a Southern League going around. Back in those days, got into a lot of fights because we were non-blacks. My brother got out a couple times. He pulled butcher knives from the store because he worked in the butcher. I work as cashier, so I work up in the front of the store. And so he got in a couple of fights. He pulled out those knives. He'd be chasing guys down there. It was crazy back in those days.
Yeah.
But, we were young, and it was a different culture altogether. But a lot of those guys that I still see, like I said, we remain friends for 50, 60 years. And during the riots, what happened is the day that it happened, the alarm went off at the store. So they called my dad. So my dad said, somebody did something to the store, so we got to go down. So me and my brother jumped in the car, followed him down. So when we turned from 120th Street, we made a left turn on Avalon Boulevard, and we didn't know what was going on. And all of a sudden, we see all this mass of people along both sides of the streets. And because we were light-skinned, they thought we were white. Next thing you know, we've seen bottles, bricks, everything that was thrown at our car. And we were driving fast. So we had about 10 blocks to go down to the store. And then when we got there, our front window was broken in. And somebody threw a brick into it. And so we didn't know what was going on. And a bunch of my friends from school was there. They told us, get the hell out of here. Yeah. The people are crazy right now. Don't worry about it. We'll cover the school. We'll cover the store for you until you get back in the morning time. And so that's what happened. 8 of my friends from school watched the store overnight. And when we came back, and then all the windows were broken. So nothing was burnt or anything like that. They didn't loot anything that day, but they kept everybody out of the store for us. And so, we thanked them. And then one of the guys came in later on and said, I'm the one who broke your window. I threw a brick at a cop, missed him, and hit your window and broke it. So that's how we found out about that stuff. So at that time, my brother Curtis was going to summer school at George Washington High School. So he had to take a bus back to the neighborhood. And so I asked a couple of my friends to go down there and walk him back from the bus stop to the store. So they did that. 3 of them guys went down there and brought him back. And so that night we were just watching, but any of the white folks are driving by, they stopped them, they flipped the cars over. I mean, they were crazy. And these people I've known for years, And then later on, it was a bunch of people from outside neighborhood. That was the problem of the riot. It wasn't people from our neighborhood. It was people from Compton that came down. Since it's not their area, they just came down
to just shit on it. Yeah.
Break things into a barbershop next to it was a cleaner, all black owned. They put their sign out there, but they still went through it, so it was crazy. And that area was all the businesses, so that was a famous barbershop there. Was Muhammad Ali used to come get his hair cut there. Yeah. So we used to see him in the neighborhood when he came into L.A. area. So it was crazy. So there was a lot of history going around at that time period. But we were part of history was my dad's store was always shown in the news.
It's in the newspaper clippings everywhere.
In the L.A. Time newspaper, the Herald Examiner, all these ones, they always showed our store, Being and Yet Market. And they made many books also, and it was always showing up in the different books about the Watts Riot. So we were always part of the L.A. history. So that was part of it. During the time period, also I ran around. Well, I knew a lot of guys who were in different gangs. In the beginning, it was called the businessmen. They were the beginning of the guys that ran the neighborhood, part of it. And later on, it was the Watts and the Solosons, which became the Bloods and the Cribs. Wow. So those all the guys that started before that time. And I knew a lot of those guys back then because I went to school with them. Yeah. So I was always friendly with a lot of those guys.
Yeah, I talk about it all the time with how lucky I am to be born into this generation where it's almost, it's accepted, it's almost cool to be Asian right now. We got movies with Asian people as the stars like, Shang-Chi that just came out, Crazy Rich Asians, and here you are where, you're back there, one of the few Asians in an entire city. And obviously you just talked about, everything that happened in that, but in your own personal life, is that what led you to eventually starting martial arts? Was the fact that you had to fight so often, or what was it that spurred you into learning?
Well, yeah, that was part of it, but a lot of times back in those days, what we saw like in sports on TV, roller derby, wrestling, that kind of stuff. I mean, I got to meet Mr. Moto, Freddie Balassi, Haystack Calhoun, all these old wrestlers from back in the 60s. They were down wrestling at the old Olympic Auditorium, and where Judo Gene LaBelle, his mom owned the auditorium, so he was working down there all the time. So back in those days, my mom and dad, they loved roller derby. We used to go to the roller derby games, all the time. We're hanging on the railing trying to swing at people.
Crazy.
It was crazy. But you got to see a lot of the fighting that they were doing, and, we just got more into something like that. And so that's why I really got into, try to get into the martial art as a set way of learning, but, not just street fighting per se. So it started with judo. So that was our first formal training. But we got a lot of I got a lot of fights in elementary school and junior high school, walking back and forth from school. But back in where I went, Henry Clay Junior High School is predominantly white. Okay. So the problems they were having was with the black students that were bused out there, and also with us Asian guys that were there. So they had what's called the surfers and the hodads. So they were massive fighting all the time. So, I got in fights of all kind of ways, It was just crazy. And so back in those young days, only ones that back us up were the blacks. So, so the Asians and the blacks all got together. So when we got in the fights, we had, back in those days, they had guns in the lockers. They had gangs coming over because there was no... it was open season. Everybody just come from different schools. It was crazy. But there were some violent times during that time period we were learning. And then later on got into what's called a Kaji Kenpo system. And that was from a lot of guys from our high school that we all got together. On weekend, we practiced at my mom and dad's house. And so that's how we started learning. So that's where I started what's called a Chinese Physical Health Club. The beginning of all the way I was going to start teaching, because I was learning many different styles at the time period, but we used the house as the main center for training. So that was Curtis, my brother, James Liu, who happened to be our next door neighbor.
Wow.
I've known James since 1961. It's 60 years now that I've known him. And so we were training partners all the time. We were always working out, always doing wrestling or kicking or something. Started different martial art classes. We started Tang Soo Do together. So back there, that's before Taekwondo came around. Tang Soo Do was under Chuck Norris. Mm-hmm. So that was way before he got into the movies. So I've known all these guys, a lot of these martial artists before they got into the movie. Like Chuck Norris, Mike Stone, there's, I can't even think of all the names. Met Ed Parker back in those days. Benny Ukitas, Eric Lee, all the stuff in the tournaments where we were back in the 60s we're talking about now. So there was many famous martial artists at that time period that I met before they got into the movies, So, and then I like Sho Kasuki. I knew him long before he did the whole Ninja series. But he was the part that he would not use any of his friends to be in the movies. Always pick guys outside. But Steve Lambert, one of my students, later became his stunt coordinator for all the ninja films. He did 6 or 7 movies with him. They did a lot of that. And did all the techniques we were doing was a ninja. It was my White Lotus Kung Fu system.
And so when you're talking about these original days training at the house, like, is this high school time where you're starting this training, or how old were you when you started?
Yeah, that was in the high school time period. That's where we got together with many friends at that time. We had guys from Dorsey High School, Manual Arts and so forth, that went into Hapkido, into Taekwondo, into Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, different styles of Kung Fu, Choi Lei Foot, Hung Ga, Eagle Claw, 5 Animal Style with Art Wong and so forth. So we all had a melting pot. We all practiced. It was crazy the way we used to practice. We used to practice almost like 7 days a week. When after we got out of high school into college, that's when I was really crazy.
Yeah.
So, because in between classes at LA City College, we found an empty classroom, and we had different people come from different styles, and we worked out. We wanted to see what worked. Some of the Kung Fu stuff was good to a certain point, but wasn't strong compared to some of the karate style. The hardest hitting guys are the Shotokan guys. Yeah. Hardest kickers are the Hapkido guys and the Taekwondo guys. And then we had guys come from Hong Kong that did the double swords. He was working with the fencing coach. He was head of the U.S. fencing coach for the Olympic game. Destroyed that coach like in seconds. Because the Kung Fu art, that's when I started thinking, wow, weapons, Chinese weapons, something else. So I wanted to learn more about the Kung Fu art. But before that time period, there was no Kung Fu. My main thing was I was in the Kaji Kenpo, Shotokan, Lima Lama, Kenpo Karate, so forth, until Art Wong opened up his first studio, and that was in 1959, but I didn't get there until 1964.
So at that point, you're like 16 years old?
So? Yeah, but around that time period,
okay.
16, 17, 18, we were working with guys. What happened, because during the Watts Riots, we were 16, 17, and after the store got burned, there was nothing else, we didn't reopen it again.
Okay.
We didn't go back. So my dad started working for my uncle or his cousins at another grocery store, a large grocery store in the South Central area. And so we did different type of work. We were working at the airplane factory, cleaning up metals, scrap metals and steel, oil, all this crazy stuff, 3 o'clock in the morning till 7, got home, cleaned up, then we went to school. We did that 6 days a week. So because we didn't have a job. My mom became a seamstress. She started working at different sewing factories and stuff until she had her own factory, and that's when she developed a uniform for us to sell. Oh, we opened the Kung Fu School in 1973.
Okay.
So that's where we first started. And that was crazy because when we had the uniform made, Curtis tried to get an ad in Black Belt magazine, and we found out what the prices were. He said, "This is crazy to pay that much money. There's no way you can sell 1 million uniform to make up for the money for that."
Oh, wow.
And so he decided, you know what, I'm going to do my own magazine. And that's how the concept inside Kung Fu. What happened first in 1973, we wanted to open up a studio in the Gardena area, but we couldn't get a license or anything like that to do that. So my brother went out to the Van Nuys area in Panorama City, and he found it in the valley. And this is like 30 miles away from where we live.
Yeah.
It's a whole different concept altogether. Valley was a long ways compared to where we were at in our Gardena area. And so we were working at the time. Let's go back a little bit earlier than that, why we opened the school. Because before that, we were practicing in my mom and dad's garage.
Yeah, the garage days.
Right. So I had my garage boys and all these guys. And one day, my dad's insurance man came in and was renewing his policy. So he came outside, and we were in the garage working out. And he's looking at us and said, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "I'm doing Kung Fu." He said, "Really?" And I said, "I have a friend that needs guys to help him with his new project he's doing. And you think I can give him your number and have him call you?" I said, "Sure." So next day I got a call from David Chow, the technical advisor of Kung Fu.
The original series with David Carradine.
The original series. And this was in 1971. The movie was not released until 1972. So we were filming. So anyway, they took me down to Warner Brothers studio. And I met with all the guys. And, before that time period, we heard that Bruce Lee was supposed to be part of this event. He was supposed to have a TV show going on. So that's what I was asking. I said, then they said, "Well, we have this actor. We're going to see if you think if he looks Eurasian." I said, "Eurasian?"
Yeah, what is that?
I said, "Okay, well, let's see what he looks like." And they brought out David Carradine with a skull cap on, had his eyes done up, so raised up a little bit. So I said, "Yeah, he sort of looked Eurasian." He said, "Well, this is a guy who's going to be the star of the show." I said, "What happened to Bruce Lee?" He said, "Well, we decided not to use him. This is who we're going to use, David Carradine."
A non-martial artist.
That's what I asked him. I said, "Does he know anything?" He said, "No, he's a dancer. But we want to know, can you train him?" I said, "Sure, I can train anybody." That's no problem. I said, "Yeah." So that's how I got involved in it. So it was myself and Cam Yuen, Thai Mantis. We both met together, and we were like helping David Chow. What we didn't know, David Chow didn't know any Kung Fu. He's a black
just a
belt
producer.
in judo.
Yeah.
So that's what he was on. In magazine, he's on the cover on different magazines doing judo and everything else. But David is a salesman. He can sell you dirt in the desert, and you'd be laughing about it and want it, So that's what he was. He was a salesman. So he got me and Cam to decide, said, I need you guys to help me because I don't know that much about it.
About Kung
and
Fu,
so,
yeah.
because in the beginning, he was going to have them all in judo uniform, white uniform with the belts, and going barefooted and all this kind of stuff and bowing down and, not using the Kung Fu salutes and different things like that. I said, whoa, wait a minute. This is not what Kung Fu's about. We wear uniform. We do certain things. And so that's how we got involved. So he kept us going on as his assistants to help him do that. So I helped him mainly through the tempo scene, the fight scene.
Yes.
So I was David Carradine's first instructor. I was helping teach him to walk on the rice paper, how to do the different stances, fighting with the staff and different things like that. So it was an exciting time because I was in quite a few different parts. I've seen myself about 16 different parts in there, banging the gong, being flipped in the beginning and the opening. We did all kinds of stuff and then set up some of the fight scenes for him. Some of the stuff you see him like when he's coming out of the desert, when he's getting a glass of water, making tea with it. And he's kicking the guy, but the guy pulled a knife on him, so he kicks it. But he can't do a front kick, so he's holding onto the bar because he has
So they
no
do
balance.
a close-up.
All you can see is the feet, and you see the knife up in the air.
Oh, we still deal with that in 2021 sometimes. We're having to cut around actors, yeah.
Yes, you do. So that was the beginning. We saw that. But in the beginning, Carradine didn't know that much about martial arts. But later on, he started studying with Cam Yuen.
Okay.
And so he studied. So he made a tape on Kung Fu and a tape on Tai Chi. So he started getting more into the martial arts. He later on went into the Shaolin Temple to check it out. I learned, saw different areas, but he loved the martial arts. So, so he really got more into it. But for that, because I was considered a stuntman on the series, I worked the original pilot film. Then later on, I got Kurt and James. They work on the first first couple seasons. So they did that. So that was in 1972. And then we opened our school in 73. So our advertising was Stuntman from the Kung Fu series. So that's how we advertised. So it was Kurt and James are on the cover of Black Belt magazine with David Carradine doing a kick apart from the Kung Fu series. So we used that cover as part of our advertising also. So we had quite a few different people come down when we first opened up. I had so many challenges because I was still young at that time period.
This is a time where people understand. He's talking about other martial artists will come to the gym to challenge you on your fighting style to see who's better.
Yep. They came down. I had challenges from different karate styles, judo, whatever there was, even Kung Fu style. But I was young, 23 years old. Well, how do you know what you know? Let's see if it's any good. I had so many challenges. It was crazy. And people threatening with guns and all this kind of stuff like this. But here, they don't know my background.
Yeah.
I'm used to street fighting already. So, I'm raised South Central. There's things that we did fighting-wise. It's not just pull back, point fighting or anything, touch, kiss, contact or anything like that. We're going to fight. We're going to go down somebody standing with somebody down on the ground. So I had many challenges in the beginning. So it was crazy. So, but we established ourselves. That was the whole thing I did. And a lot of times right after I beat the guy out, but I just told him, walk out that door and don't come back because I don't need you as a student. You try to do this challenge nonsense. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You come, ask nicely, whatever, let's see what it looked like. It was great. But some guys just come in, take off their shoes, start kicking. It was crazy. So by that time, I was also training with one of my most influential fighting teacher, Tiny Lafitte. And we were all street fighters. Yeah. I mean, everything was for the street. It was not for tournament fighting. So that's where I was taught. And the way we were never allowed to back up. He would stand behind it, each one of us when we were fighting with a baseball bat. We backed up, we got hit. So we we would not go back. We'd go forward, run your butt over. So that's the way we were taught. So there was a lot of drills like that we had to do. So we didn't care. I mean, he had us. Had to get kicked in the groin. That was part of it. I mean, put the cup on, but man, you stand there and you get a guy full blast kick lift into your groins. That's what he kept doing. And then we were fighting, punching. I mean, it was just overall, that was it. He prepared us for the streets. So that's the way I conditioned my students. I went through a whole different concept of body conditioning so that whenever they got hit or kicked on the street, they could either fight or just laugh it off and just walk away. But it takes two people to fight. One walks away, there's no fight. And a lot of our guys, they had a family, they had jobs, they had different things. So if it was serious enough, just walk away. But if they were pushed, they would finish their job. Yeah. So that's the way I try to teach them. Try not to hurt anybody, but if you have to, hurt them. If they're threatening you with bodily harm or deadly force, you have to take them out.
Yeah, I think the concept of body conditioning was something that was very unique. I mean, even back when I was a kid, I remember part of our demo team when we would go out is we would display the body conditioning. And hopefully I'll be able to find a clip. If not, I'll explain it verbally from what I remember as a kid is, part of the body conditioning stuff that we would do in the system is we would use sticks. Almost similar to like a Eskrima sticks, but a little thicker. Yep. And we literally sit and we do repetitions of beating the front of your thighs, beat the back of our thighs. We'd hit our stomachs, we hit our rib cage, we then hit ourselves in the throat. And then we would go into, 3-star stuff where, you're going forearm to forearm hitting each other and then even practicing hitting your own throat. And then I remember the one that would make people laugh is we would sit and we slap each other in the face hard. Right. But when I look back upon it, what you're doing is you're teaching people to not flinch and not be afraid of the moment when you actually get hit and have contact for the first time, which to the outside world is almost comical because people are like, why are these people sitting here slapping each other? But when I think about it now and you say these stories, it's probably one of the smartest things to do. It's similar to how Muay Thai guys condition their shins so that they're ready for when they take, check a kick or they have impact. You were just doing full body conditioning that people just weren't used to, I guess.
Yep. But the main thing was I made them have their eyes open when they get slapped, not to close, not to flinch, to keep your eyes fully focus on that person in front of you. Yep. And once you focus on with the mind, the body, and spirit, there's no pain. That's the whole thing. You take it. You absorb. That's what you're trying to do. And so a lot of times, because once you get hit on the street the first time, you go crazy. You don't know what's going on. Oh, wow, that hurts. Then you hit the ground or something, you don't know what's going on. And your mind is confused. You don't know how to defend yourself. That's why we made them stand there. They had punching each other in the stomach 100 times, kick behind the legs, so they can feel the impact of what a punch and a kick is. But until you realize what it is, the first time you get done on the street, you can't control it.
It's like that famous quote, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. Yeah. And then it usually goes out the door if you're not ready for that moment, you know what I'm saying? Right. And so, yeah, I could totally see it. And things have always been practical to you. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but I remember as a kid, even one thing that you taught me growing up, which is kind of funny, was how to spit with intention. Drop a loogie and be able to spit, but not just spit and spray, but spit targeted wise. And I'll even remember the story I used to tell my friends. There was one time, it was back when Mom was in the hospital, and we were walking in the parking garage, and there was a camera that was doing this, and you were like, watch this, and you waited, and the camera turned, and you went, whoom, and you filled the lens, and I was like, holy shit. What is this? And so for any of my friends that always hear me like coughing and spitting, I can spit insanely far. I could spit almost, 20 something feet, hit a wall from here. And it was all because you had trained me practically like to have that as a self-defense mechanism. Yep.
That was part of the stuff that we learned from Tiny. But he used to chew tobacco. So when he spit, either get into your eyes, burn, or he always told me spit in the mouth, and those guys are grabbing and choking
because it feels gross. Yeah,
and that's where their hands are, and that's when you do your attacks.
Shit, it makes a lot of sense. It's so crazy. Yeah. And so dating back to all of this stuff, like your martial arts journey is something that could probably take a whole episode in itself. But when it's all said and done, I think that you give credit to like 8 major instructors over the course of your life. Did you obtain black level sashes in all of them, or like what level, I guess, did you get the furthest in?
Yeah, I attained a lot of the instructor and black sash level. I mean, I trained in a lot of other styles, karate styles, the Aikido and Judo and so forth. I didn't get into the black belt level on that, because I got more into the Kung Fu. So when I started, first Kung Fu was the 5 animal style and the 5 family style under Grandmaster Art Yui Wong. So I got an instructor or a black sash in both those things. So there's like 10 different styles right there. But he was my first instructor that I learned from. But at the same time, when I was taking lessons from him, a new Kung Fu school opened down the street, about 3 blocks down. Not even 3 blocks. Yeah, 3 blocks. And it was the American Legion in Chinatown. It was called Yak Kung Moon, or soft hand style, Richard Wan. So that was a style that was against the Shaolin style. Shaolin style is one major style that's covered out there. That's what most styles are. And Yak Kung Moon is the anti-style against the Shaolin style. So from there, that's called, they had the dragon system, the white tiger system, the Yak Kung Moon, or white eyebrow style. Because white eyebrow came first, and Yak Kung Moon is a break-off. The teacher broke away from the white eyebrow style. And a lot of their sets are still the same set.
Yeah.
But they separated. And the Yak Kung Moon, or soft hand style, was one of the strongest lion dancing group in China, and even here in the United States. Back in the 80s and 90s, they're still one of the top lion dancing group. That's where you probably seen when we used to go to tournaments. They climbed the poles, they did different stances and so forth. But that's one of the systems I study under. And so I learned a lot of stuff from there. And then later on, I studied what's called the Chole foot system, which you was also exposed when you was a young guy. I took you over there learned from Master Fa Ning. And their family are the original founder of the Chole foot system. And he was like fifth generation. His mom was fourth, but she was the great-granddaughter of the founder of the Chole foot system. But the hard part for you, I know, was because they spoke Chinese and you didn't understand any of that.
I didn't understand anything.
But you learned some of the stuff there. You got exposed to it. So the main thing, I just wanted you to see there was different styles out there. And so that was part of it. And I learned eagle claw, praying mantis from my other friends. I didn't get black sash or anything like that, but I wanted to learn different elements of the different styles that were out there. It was mainly for competition and fighting wise. Because each one had their specific techniques. Like the mantis, when they use a lot of the hooks and stuff, a lot of them don't understand that the hitting point was inside the knuckle that would hit the different pressure point. This hooks onto the arm, but the knuckle would hit the different pressure points. So that's what you had to look at. And so I wanted to learn the different fighting element of each one. You know, the 5 basics that I learned was a tiger, leopard, crane, snake, and dragon. Yeah. So from Art Wong. So I try to mix all that in. Now, when I first opened up in 1973, I was under the 5 animal system, teaching under Art Wong. But as I was doing that, I had so much more to offer because I learned so many different styles, so I just couldn't call it 5 animals. And so I sat with my group of senior students in 1976, and we came up with the name of White Lotus. And that's where my system, White Lotus, started to come from, because it was a blend of all the styles that I learned. The Kung Fu system and Aikido, Judo, Kenpo, Lima Lama, all of it, because I wanted to have one system. So anybody came to our system was a complete system. You didn't have to go somewhere else to try to learn this part. Because when I went in there, certain teacher would teach the fighting aspect, the animal styles, the forms, the weapons, but not the healing or the internal or the medicine. So that's where I learned that later on from my other teacher, Sher Lu. And he taught me more internal about the healing aspect. But his philosophy is, if we hurt you, we must be able to fix you. So that's where we learned the healing aspect. And he would have different sessions on the weekend where we had people come in and we would work on healing, how to do tendons, how to do bone setting, how to use the herbal medicine applied to fractures, broken bones, dislocated joints, different things like this. So I try to learn that a lot. So that's what I've been doing the last 12 years now, going down to Mexico, teaching the healing aspect of the White Lotus system. So I teach them how to do all the body alignment, how to use different herbs, how to do acupressure massaging and so forth. So I have a large following down in Mexico doing that now.
And so when you're learning these early martial arts systems and jumping around, did you have to get permission from your instructors in order to learn other arts? Was it one of those things that was taboo to learn multiple things, or were you able to just kind of go on your own?
I basically went on my own. Yeah, you're supposed to ask permission to go to different teachers. But, you know, a lot of them, some of the old style fashion, they don't want you going anywhere. So even when I did it, after I start teaching everything else, I told my students, if you want to go check out different styles, go ahead. Always try to learn, add to what you already know. Like I always told them, don't forget what you learn. But a lot of teachers will tell you, well, you came from another style, forget all that stuff. My style is better. But how are you going to do that? If you fight that person from that style later on and you forgot all the technique, what good did it do? Yeah. Why did you practice, use all your time? I always told them and said, don't empty the cup. They always tell you, say, empty your cup so you gain not more knowledge. I said, just get more cups, 6, 7 more cups.
Yeah.
Why do just one cup? Learn to use it. Every teacher has a different interpretation and understanding of how to teach, how for you to learn, how to absorb. So that's why I always tell them, say, don't forget whatever you learn. Add to it. The more you know the knowledge. It's like encyclopedia. You have, A to Z, whatever, back in the old days, but now everything's on the internet. You don't read that stuff anymore. But that's what I wanted them to do. Know your subject well from different philosophy, different ideas. So this is what makes you a whole person, universal person, so that you're not just stuck to one system. Yeah. One person said, well, Wing Chun's the best. That's all you have to do. It has its limit. Trolley foot is good to this. This is this. My White Lotus, is good to a certain point, but it depends on you, the individual. The style may be great, but the individual, if you don't have the individual idea of the mind, body, and spirit, it's not going to work for you. So that's what you have to go on. So once you learn it, you understand it, use what is useful, as Bruce Lee is saying, and discard the other. But I always like to keep everything just in case, because you look at a person like I used to have, where I used to teach you guys was, one, if a person has a question, you must have 10 answers to that one question, because that one answer you give him, he may not understand. You may have to come with a different approach altogether. So if you got 9 other ways of explaining, one of them is going to work. Yeah. And it makes you think, make you a better person. You're deeper into your own concept. That's what you have to do. Understand. That's why in school, some professors are great because they explain different things to you until you can understand it. Some just say, this is one idea, this is it. And you don't understand it. You never approach it, and that's why you hate the subject. But if a teacher can teach you many ways of finding a way to get to the heart of what you understand, mind, body, and concept, then you will really understand it and use it and teach it and love it.
Yeah, 100%. It's very funny because, I get asked all the time, just as a stunt coordinator or fight coordinator these days, people ask me, like, what's the best style to learn? And I tell them, realistically, you should learn everything. You should expose yourself to as many styles as possible. And while I know that can't be possible from a time perspective and a monetary perspective for a lot of people, exposing yourself to as many things as possible is the name of the game, to be, a Swiss Army knife instead of a single blade. You want to be able to have as many tools in the kit as possible. And to be really honest with you, it's funny because obviously, as you know, I just got back from UFC 269 where I went with my friends, but I've always been exposed to, in my opinion, mixed martial arts from a very early age, because it was never just about Kung Fu. I remember even at the original studio on the Roscoe days when we first, the school that I grew up in, not only did we do the Kung Fu and stuff, but we had a boxing ring in the studio as well. And for a lot of people, it's like, why would you have a boxing ring inside of a Kung Fu studio? And that was because you continue to expose elements from all different types of styles as opposed to just staying traditional on one set way.
Yes. Let's go way back now. Back in 1973, when I first opened up, there's so many different actors coming in to try to learn some type of self-defense or Kung Fu. But back in the 70s, not like now.
Yeah.
They had the TV series. Each one, you'd have one for the blacks, one for the Latinos, one for the Asians, and the rest are Caucasians. So that's the way it was back in those days. You know, it's not like now now your Asian could be the star of the whole thing, the whole series. But that's the way everything works. So I had all these different actors come in and try to learn. And they were trying to learn for the series Quincy, SWAT, Heart to Heart. My brother got into all that kind of stuff, Macmillan and Wife. I mean, there's all these old series, Police Story, Adam 12 and stuff like that. Was back in those days, they were filming all different areas where I worked, because I worked for the city of Los Angeles for 25 years. And so they used to film all these different things, Beretta, Adam 12, I forget all these Magnums and different TV shows I can't even think of now. But they were all coming in to learn. I had the Lockers, they were the original dancers back in the days. They would come to the studio and learn. and then I had people from Motown. I had students that came with me that we were teaching Stevie Wonder's band, Diana Ross's kids, Berry Gordy's kids. I mean, I was hooked in with Motown stuff.
Eventually, the musical director, The Temptations. I got to go to a bunch of shows with The Temptations as a kid.
Yeah, you got to go see all that. Ron Coleman, because he was the musical director for The Temptations. And we used to go to all the concerts. We used to go backstage. You see Smokey Robinson, Berry Gordy, The Temptations. Everybody. There was the days. We got to meet a lot of people, and they got to learn the different martial art area. But even Michael Jackson, those guys, they later on learned from Ty Mantis from Cam UN. But I had a lot of Motown people also. So I mean, those are the days that I had. I had singers, opera singers, musicians, Magic Castle. I mean, I've been written in so many different books that they put out themselves. They always dedicated, a little bit to me, So I've done so many different things from different walks of life. So I had people that were leading different orchestras in Santa Barbara and stuff like that, lead conductors, and so a lot of the stuff. I had guys that were doing movie fight scenes from here to New York that all learned from the Kung Fu system. So I mean, it was crazy. I mean, I've been involved in the entertainment business for so long.
And one thing that I have to ask you about, because this is something that I hold dear to my heart, and I'm sure you do too in a lot of ways, which is, we'll get into the books and videos that you put out over time, but one of the books that you've written that is most famous, the foreword to the entire book is a letter written to you and signed by Muhammad Ali, who, in my opinion, and I'm sure many people that are listening and watching this would agree, is one of the most iconic boxers of our generation, or of all time. How did you get linked up with him? Because I mean, it was to the point where he not only wrote the foreword to your book, he was at the grand opening of the studios. I have pictures where he's holding me as a little kid, which is crazy when I tell people this. They're like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "I have the proof. Like, here's the photos." How did you get linked up with him?
One of the girls at work, when I worked for the city of Los Angeles, her boyfriend was part of Muhammad Ali's boxing stable.
Okay.
And so he wanted to get some more training, different ways. And so he introduced me to Muhammad Ali. And so I used to go down to the 26th Street gym in Los Angeles and work out with his guys. And I was training them. I was teaching them the sticky hand, sticky legs, and stuff like that. So I was in the boxing ring. But some of these guys were 6'4", 6'5", 300. I mean, they're some big boys.
Yeah, heavyweights.
And so, yeah, they're heavyweights. They hit you, man, you're gone. So I have to definitely hook their hands, tie them up, get them into the corner, use my legs, bump the knees, do all kind of stuff, keep them off balance where they couldn't hurt me. So that's the whole idea. So he loved the training. So that's why I was working with him, his boxing stable, some of the guys down there. And so that's how we begin to start talking. And, you call me up once, twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. And we just sit there and talk about life, about everything, how the world was, how people perceive different ideas, different concepts, about, how helping the people, about different things about religion and everything else. And he had all kind of gifts for you guys, postcards from the Thriller in Manila, signed to you and Tia, and these cups, gold cups that he gave for your birthday, and there's so many different things, So like a lot of pictures, and it was a time right before his what you call it, sickness.
Parkinson's.
Parkinson's, yeah. And, he was going through different experimental drugs at UCLA trying to control it. So this was all prior to that time period, And his favorite thing was magic. He used to love to do his little tricks and stuff like that with magic. And he'll sit out there and do a show for everybody. But he was an amazing guy. He had extremely long arms. I mean, he was like 8, 9 inches on me. Right. He jabbed that at me and keep me at bay, So it was something else. But he was one of the nicest guy, one of the most intelligent guy in the world. And always thankful that he did the foreword for my book, So he always thanked me for helping him and his family, being friends and so forth. And that was one great man, definitely.
I mean, I hope you guys are all starting to realize why I say I haven't accomplished shit in my life. This is part of the reason why growing up, like as a kid, it was such a daunting task to be born into this family, which is a blessing in disguise. But at the same time, like I'm sure people that are listening to this are just like, what in the hell? All of these things that you accomplished is insane, which is why for the longest time, like, I've always told people, like, guys, wait until you know my dad's story. Like the accomplishments he's had in the martial arts is far reaching, and we're really just touching the surface right now, along the lines of that, him writing the foreword to one of your books. You actually published 4 books in total, I believe. Right. 4 books in total, one of which at one point was even being used as material in different colleges around the United States. I remember back in the days where they would use one of them as reading material.
Yep. Kung Fu, The Way of Life, my first book. And it was in every library in the United States. It went worldwide. Just this year, it was rated as one of the top 10 Kung Fu books of all time. So, I mean, it's gone worldwide, millions of readers. I mean, all of my 4 books, almost 1 million copies of all 4. So
it's really crazy. I'll still meet people right now, and when they find out who you are, they'll always refer to, I used to have that book back in the day. I'm like, yeah, no shit, I know that book. Like, it's pretty crazy. But when you were doing these books, what was the reasoning behind it, or what inspired you to put it down on paper? Because I feel like that's something that not a lot of people do. So what inspired you to actually put it down on paper, and what was the process? How long did it take?
Well, first of all, when we started the magazine, we started the school first. That was 1973, January. And then when we, like I said, we tried to do an ad in Black Belt magazine, and my brother decided to do a concept for the magazine of his own. So we did that. Concept came out in May of 1973. And then from that time, we got the first issue published in October of 73 with the cover date of December 1973. And on the cover was David Carradine and David Chow from the Kung Fu series. And on the back cover was Bruce Lee from Enter the Dragon. And also inside the issue was my teacher, Art Wong. Mm-hmm. So, and also our first article, Shaolin Training in the Mountains.
Yes, I've seen those pictures.
Yes, so that was with all my guys, James, Albert, James Liu, Albert Leong, all my garage boys, Todd Takeuchi, Steve Lambert, all these guys, all back in the days. So from that point on, when we did the magazine, I was one of the main writers for Inside Kung Fu. Then later on, my brother came out with Inside Taekwondo, Inside Karate, Masters and Styles, and he has so many different titles. And then he started what's called Manta Supply Company. And that's where we started selling the uniform, the different weapons, the Japanese weapon, kamas, sickles, nunchucks, staff, and so forth. And he said, we should maybe do a book. Oh. That's when the concept of the book. And when I did my first book, Kung Fu, The Way of Life, it was a big book. And then they decided to split that book in half and came up with the second title, Shaolin Fighting Theories and Concepts.
Yeah.
So that's the black cover with James.
Yeah. Oh, so it got split.
It got split, and it didn't make any sense because when I had it was all in order.
Yeah.
And when they divided it up, it didn't make any concept. That's why I had to make the disclaimer saying that by both book as one. That's what it was.
Crazy.
And so that's what happened. And so I didn't notice it at first, but when I took the book down to Art Wong, my teacher, to show him, he said, "You're not in any of the first book here." They took all the pictures that I was in and put it into like the second book. There was different things. He said, "It's not all here." I said, "Oh," and they put. So I said, "I didn't have anything to do with the division. They put the two titles so they can have
two books,
double sales."
Double sales,
and that's what it did.
Business.
They went worldwide with that, and so that was in. They used at different schools in Arizona as part of their curriculum, and so that they're using it as a training book, and so a lot of it went all the way into China. Jet Li had my book. Conan Lee in New York, who was another Hong Kong actors that had it. Donnie Yen, all these guys all had my books back in the days.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it went worldwide, all the way back to Hong Kong, to China, Israel, South America, Africa, everywhere. It just went worldwide, and it helped introduce the world of Kung Fu.
Yeah. The two other books that came out would be Kung Fu, The Endless Journey, and then The Deceptive Hands of Wing Chun, which is one of the ones that actually most people bring up to me as well. Because for a lot of people, they say it was their first book that they really saw on Wing Chun back in the days.
It was one of the books. But what happened, they had Wing Chun, they did the first set, Sin Lum Thao, which is the first book. It was Jimmy Lee, was a partner to Bruce Lee. So they wrote the first book. There was like a couple books out already just on the first set. My book came out. It was on the second set, which nobody had done at all.
Okay. That makes
So
sense.
that's why mine became the most sought after at that time period. It's even written in the Wing Chun History Museum.
Because it's new info.
I was the first one to bring it out in English or Chinese or whatever it was.
Shit.
I was the first one. But after that, everybody came up with the second set, the third set, the weapon set, everybody. So I never went back and did any of the other books after that because everybody else came out with it, you know.
Crazy.
So I just left that alone. But yeah, mine was the first book, and now they're all talking about, well, that book's not that good and everything else. It was the first one out, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
And now they criticize about it. You know, now they're talking about, whoa, there's more concept. One of the best ones I looked was by my friend Randy Williams.
Okay.
When he did the Wing Chun, it was like 8 volumes.
Oh, shit. So
It was
comprehensive
big.
history.
Comprehensive.
Yeah.
Very good. And you know, he was the one that worked with Steven Seagal. He was the part of his bodyguarding and stuff like that. And that's where Steven Seagal started picking up part of the Wing Chun art, adding it to his Aikido.
Yeah.
And so forth. So, yeah, so it's all different. But, you know, that was a day, back in the days, you know, Wing Chun was one of my arts. It was, you know, not per se, I enjoyed it, but I had other styles that I still like even more. So that's what I like about it.
I think one of the other things that also was as a really standout contribution that you made to the arts is breaking onto the competition scene with Chinese martial arts in a time and an era where it was tournaments were basically made for karate styles and taekwondo styles, and fast forward to, you know, someone like myself that grew up as a fan of NASCA. There became a time period where all the NASCA tournaments were being won by wushu guys, from Ho Sung Pak to DX to Ming Q, and I laugh because basically what they did was what you did back in the day, which was you came onto the scene with some unfamiliar looking stuff, and people were just blown away with it because they're so used to seeing one certain style.
Yes. When we first started that school in 1973, we wanted to get more well-known. So that's when we entered the tournament circuit.
Yep.
That was in May of 1973 when we first entered our tournament. I got everybody prepared for it. Our first tournament was at Tadashi Yamashita's tournament.
Wow.
He was one of the top karate guys.
Old school legend.
We entered 35 different entry points, divisions, so forth, fighting, weapons, hand forms, so forth. We did not win one single event at all.
Wow.
What happened was we went out there, it was all karate uniform, all white uniform. We came out with a mass of black, the black kung fu uniform. And they didn't know what the hell we were doing. They didn't understand the concept of kung fu. They'd never seen it before.
They don't even know how to judge it.
They didn't know how to judge it at all. But the crowd went crazy watching our set because they knew that was completely different from the karate. I mean, the excitement, the jumping in the air, the acrobatics, and everything that we did, it just wowed them, you know. Imagine seeing James and Albert doing their stuff.
Yeah.
And they didn't understand it. And all, even the guys that compete against them, they said, there's no way we could beat them.
Yeah.
But they knew, but the judges couldn't do it. And so the only person they knew at that time period doing Kung Fu was Eric Lee.
Of course. Hollywood Eric Lee.
The king of kata.
The king of kata.
They had the name in the Japanese way, the kata, you know, not the form, you know.
Yeah.
But that's what happened. You know, I met Eric way back in the 60s, you know. I met him and he introduced me to Benny Ukitas. So, you know, me and Benny, we go way back. So anyway, so when we came up to competition-wise, our first one against Eric was back in 1970. That's when my Chinese physical health club, with I used Wing Wong and Stanley Inamoto. They did the sword versus spear.
Two-man set.
First two-man weapon set in competition at the Long Beach International Ed Parker's tournament.
The iconic tournament that eventually introduced Bruce Lee to the world, as well as Chuck Norris and Bill Superfoot Wallace.
Yep, and Joe Louis. Yep. All those big guys, Steve Muhammad or Steve Sanders.
Yep.
I mean, that was the top tournament, one of the top tournaments in the United States during that time period. It was the West Coast Premier Tournament.
Yeah. And
so I went in there, and we went in there, and that first tournament, Eric Lee won.
Okay.
His double broadsword. Ted DeBurrow was there, Mr. Sickle Man.
Well, yep,
so
yep,
he
yep.
was one of the most top guy. So Wing and Stan tied him for second place. So they had to go back over again. So they made a slip and made a little mistake. And so Ted took second and we took third. That's the first time we entered the international tournament.
Okay.
And thereafter, the year after, James and Albert start taking the championship. Your mom, Carrie, and Kenny Perez, you know, they later on, Robin Kane, you know, all these guys start winning at the international.
And so was it just, do you think over time people started to realize like, oh, okay, this should be worthy of winning because the crowds are going crazy? Or what was it that finally was the tipping point?
The second tournament we went to.
Okay.
Second tournament was the Lima Lama tournament, Oceanside, California.
Okay.
And that was Tino Tulasega, one of my teachers.
Yep.
Yeah, my mentor. And he got the different judges, that new Chinese style, the judges. And, you know, so the first one, I just look at the picture the other day, it was Jim Ebrow. He was Ed Parker's first black belt. Carlos Bunda from Kaji Kenpo system. Tiki Mata Ali, also into the different Chinese and Polynesian arts, and Saul Kalawalo.
Yes.
They're all part of the I don't even know who the fifth judge was, because I didn't see the picture of it, but I just happened to see those four, and they were the first judges there that did it. And so what happened was James and Albert were competing against each other. Somehow Albert whipped the chain and it fell out of his hand, flying toward the judges.
Shit.
And so he didn't qualify, so James won that one. And then thereafter, Albert started doing the Kwando besides just the chain. And we start winning everywhere. So at that time period, in Black Belt Magazine, they wrote top 10 caliber forms for competition was developed by me. Wow. With James and Albert as the head of my team. And so that's what's happened. Because we were doing it to music, we were doing it without music, whatever way. It's way before the music concept came on.
100%.
And so that's what we were doing. And so we were flipping and jumping, doing everything. So from May 1973 to December 1973, we won championships, we won trophies. I mean, we won over 500 trophies during that time period. Yeah. From fighting, weapons, hand form, it didn't matter. We sort of put Eric Lee into retirement at that time period, because what happened was he would come and he would find out what James and Albert was doing. If they were doing weapons, he would go hand.
Of course. Smart.
Or vice versa.
Smart. Yeah.
And finally, they decided we split. We're going against him.
So one did weapon, one does hands.
Yep. And then, but most of the people, judges, already knew Eric for many years of competition.
And it's political.
Yeah, so they lost by 0.1 every time they went against him. And then finally after that, he sort of retired, and then it was James and Albert winning everything.
And for those that don't know who we're referring to some very iconic stuntmen who, have had a huge impact in the world. Like you've mentioned already, Steve Lambert, Albert Leong, also James Liu, who eventually won an Emmy Award for stunt coordination, who is still working in the industry to this date. A lot of people recognize Albert Leong from Big Trouble in Little China and tons of other movies and things like that. And these were your early competition guys, in addition to my mom, who was one of the fiercest women's competitors at the time, competing against Cynthia Rothrock and Karen Shepard. And it's just crazy for me because, I got to go into competition at a time where it was accepted. And even still, when I did it, I was doing forms where you had me doing stuff that people didn't understand. I think I was one of the first people on the competition circuit to do a 3-weapon set, yep, which you had formulated. And people are probably like, what the hell are you talking about? I used to do a form where before I would start my form, I would present to the judges and they inspect your weapons. But most people then walk back and bow and start their form. I would have to ask to set up my weapons, and people are like, what the hell are you doing? I would lay double broadswords at the far side. I have whip chain in the middle, and I would start by holding a Kwando, and eventually I went to circle lance over time. And at the time, I was like, what the hell am I doing? I'm doing 3 forms in one. First of all, this is a cardio nightmare. But over time, as you know, and not to brag, I only lost maybe 2 to 3 tournaments in my entire life, which I distinctly remember. One of which was when I was 3 years old in the 7-year-old division, got second place. And then I remember another time where I dropped my weapon, and that was like the end of the world to me because I disqualified myself. And then the other time was San Jose when we went up to the Shark City Nationals, and I think I got beat by one of my good friends, Rudy Raynon, I think at the time, who now is like a friend of mine, and he was just a little kid back in the days killing it. And so it was crazy for me because growing up, I always knew that I was doing something so different. I was very aware of what I was doing was not the norm by any means, but when I look back on it, it's like this is what you had done throughout time, which was go onto a platform and try to show the world something that they've never seen before. And it was highly successful, even down to my generation.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. I always wanted the concept of being something different. You can't be like the norm, like the rest of the people. So for your 3 weapons, it's completely different altogether. And the most highly compliment I liked was when we did our show in Phoenix, Arizona, with Wu Bin, the top wushu instructor, and teacher to Jet Li and all the different wushu movie actors.
Yeah.
And he just loved your set.
Yeah.
He said, because what happens, wushu would do their sets and they stop and pose.
Always.
Regain, and then they continue. But your set was continuous from start to finish. And he said, man, that was great. He enjoyed that. Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand the concept of the wushu was what happened. Carrie, your mom, my wife, was on the first U.S. wushu team. Yeah. We were there. I was there in the beginning. It was Roger Tung and I can't even think of Annie Ching.
Okay.
That brought Anthony Chan.
Okay.
That brought wushu into the United States, and they started it. So I was there in the beginning. So I was learning the wushu form for judging purposes. Yeah. So I still have my own system, but I Carrie your mom wanted to learn different styles, so she got into that, and it was at Jimmy Ebrow School. He's the first one to open up a school where he's teaching wushu, and that's where Mortal Kombat, what's his name? Robin
Shu. Before he became the lead of Mortal Kombat.
He was your mom's classmate. Yeah. They all studied wushu together.
Yeah, she always tells the story that he used to say he's going to be a big star, and they would be like, okay, Robin.
So he did. So, we knew these guys from way back then before they got into movies. That's correct. And it's crazy. We still see him now, him and his family at Dragon Fest. Yeah. And it's great seeing it. And I just got pictures that Gary Forbach just gave me back from the 80s man, some of the guys when they're young, when your mom just starting out in the wushu, she did that for many years, but then came back to the White Lotus, our system, more traditional.
Yeah.
But we were a part of it. But, Kenny Perez, I helped sponsor him to China to learn the wushu when it first came out.
Yeah.
And so that's why wushu is in our system through Kenny.
Yep, 100%.
But he and Carrie, your mom, used to do the two-man sets all the time, win different championships all over.
Yep.
So it was crazy. So we were part of the traditional world, but we also part of the wushu world.
100%.
So it was all part of it. So anything with martial art, I just love all martial art style. Doesn't matter if it's just simple karate style, judo, aikido, whatever. But I just love all different martial arts. So I got involved in it. So if it works, if it shows good, especially when we do movies or fight scenes, you need all the different aspects to use. Break it. What can we use? What's going to look good?
Yeah.
So that's what happened.
And that's a perfect segue, because I was going to say a lot of people automatically assume that I got into stunts because you were a stuntman. And to be fully transparent, you had been a stuntman on Kung Fu, the movie and the series, but predominantly you were a martial arts instructor for the duration of your career and didn't really do a lot of on-camera stuff in front of the camera. But I think one of the major contributions that you did get to make is obviously you listed all the celebrities and stuff you trained back in the day, but around the time that I was a little kid, you also had a huge stint where you were training a lot of actors and actresses for major motion pictures and television shows. And one of the ones I think obviously is the one that should be credited the most is when you got the chance to train Jason Scott Lee for a movie called Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, arguably playing one of the most iconic martial artists of our time, Bruce Lee. And a lot of people don't know this because Jason looks very, very good on camera. So I'll let you tell the story. But when he came to study at the gym, we quickly found out that he had no martial arts experience at all and was going to play just like David Carradine, essentially an iconic martial arts figure with just a dance background.
Yep. When he first came over, Steve brought him over, and I said, well, what martial art does he know? None. And so so we had to start him from scratch.
Yeah.
How to do the stances, how to do the stretching, flexibility drills, I was teaching different stuff to work with the weapons and so forth. So that's why I see a lot of the double sword, the chain, and all that stuff in the movies. And that little kid that they used, that was supposed to have been you. Yeah. But there was a falling out, and when Steve Lambert got kicked off the movie set, and then Jerry Poteet took over. Yeah. But prior to that time, it was myself, Steve Lambert, James Liu was involved in it also. And so we trained him for 6 months for that movie.
Every day?
Every day. He came to the studio, took private. He was doing stuff with Steve. And so we worked with him all the time. So that was all part of it. But that's the first time I got to train an actor that long. But usually you get a couple weeks, a month if you're lucky.
Yeah, even now we're lucky if we get a month or two.
Yeah. A lot of times it's like 1 or 2 days.
Yeah, and the actors will only commit to 1 or 2 days because they're sore or they're just being pains in the ass, not committing to the role. So.
Yeah, well, a lot of them I got to train, just like Vanessa Angel. I trained her. She was on Weird Science and different things. She was the first one to be put up for the role of Xena, Warrior Princess. And she dropped out of the project. So then I got to train Lucy Lawless, and she took over. And so I trained her to do a lot of the different fight scenes with the swords, with the weapons. When we first got the script, we didn't know what the chakra was going to be, what type of weapon. Was it going to be circular or was it going to be straight? Yeah. So I trained her both ways. And so lucky I trained her with like a disc, like a Frisbee thing. Yeah. And so that's why it became that weapon. But I also had it thrown like a knife along stick-wise. So we didn't know what the weapon was going to be shaped like. They didn't know the idea of it. So I got to work with that. So Universal Studios, I got to work a lot with it. I did the Dragon first, and then Rafael de Lorenzo. She's the one that was the producers of it. Okay. So she recommended me for Renaissance Picture to do Hercules.
Yeah, Xena. Kevin Sorbo for Hercules, Lucy Lawless for Xena.
Right. So that's what happened is, her recommendation that I got that part. And so when I did it with Lucy, first it was Kevin Sorbo. He was Hercules. It was called Action-Packed Series. And they had Vanishing Sun. There was Knight Rider or something. I can't think of the one anyway. And then there was like 4 different things. So they asked me, did you want to do Vanishing Sun or Hercules? I said, I'll do Hercules instead. So that's what happened. Vanishing Sun was good, but it only lasted 1 season.
Yeah.
Hercules went 6 seasons.
Yeah, went on forever, and then gave a spin-off to Xena.
Yep, and went off to Xena. And those 2 became the top one. They beat out Baywatch and everybody else. Right up there with Star Trek.
Yeah.
They were the top TV series at the time period. So I got to do those. So for Kevin Sorbo, when they brought him over, he was the main thing when I start working with actors is to find out what type of sports do they play.
Yes.
Because when they asked me to come train him, I said, okay, what you want? Gladiator fighting, this type, old ballroom, They said, no, we want Kung Fu. I said, really? So I said, okay. So I had to find out what he did. So he did football already. So he knew how to roll, how to do certain things, so he wasn't afraid of hitting the ground. So that's why I work with him. When we got the script, they said they're going to have this weapon that's going to go around his wrist.
Yeah.
And different things like that they had to fight against. So I came up with a concept. You should wear a wristband.
Wrist guards, yeah.
And so that's what I said, do it. So they kept that for the whole series. Yeah. That was my idea.
He had the brown things on his wrist the whole time.
So that was there. So that was one of them. Was they had different fight scenes, they just mentioned in the script, we don't know what it was like. So I had to work with him with the sword, with the staff, with double sword, single sword, and to take away the weapons. A lot of times he didn't have a weapon. It's just his strength was he's Hercules.
Yeah.
So there's different concepts. So I worked with him for almost 8 weeks before they sent him to New Zealand to film. And he said every concept that I taught him, he used. He said it worked. It was great. He said I didn't have any surprise or anything. You trained me well. So that was one of the good. I hear from him every so often. You happen to see him.
I saw him at Burbank Airport like 3 years ago, and everyone kept bugging him, and I just waited because we were both first class. So then when we got on the plane or about to board, I was in line, and I just said, hey, man, I just want to let you know my dad's Douglas Wong, and I grew up watching you train. And he immediately knew who I was and shook my hand. It was like, wow, please say hi to your dad. Like, I haven't seen him in forever. It's crazy. Yeah. And I think one of the other things that's crazy is along the back end of that, we also got to train someone for young Hercules. And for those that don't know, this was Ryan Gosling's first ever major production TV show. And he came to the gym as this young little kid, way smaller than he is now. And we got to train him at the gym too.
Yep. Super nice guy. Understood the concept, taught him a lot of different things. His favorite weapon was the whip chain. Yeah. He loved that. So he used that in the beginning of the Young Hercules series. It was a rope type thing. And he enjoyed that. I mean, it was great working with these guys, when they were first coming up. And then your mom also got to work with
Angelina Jolie. Yeah.
So a lot of people don't understand. That was her first movie. Got to do a fight scene with her. Your mom used a single chain against her.
Cyborg 2.
Cyborg 2. I think so. And she had to go through, break into this neon light, all that gas and everything was some dangerous stuff. But there was part of the fight scene. But and then she got to teach her private lessons, doing different blade work and stuff for different other movies. So we've been quite well working with different people, so it's fun. And even working at the magazine, we used to meet all the different celebrities came there, from can't even think, Archie Bunker and all that stuff. We used to Gene Stapleton.
Yeah, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Back in the days, you got to see Kareem Jabbar. So pictures of you when you guys are young kids.
Yeah, it's crazy the amount of things I was exposed to, all because of the martial arts, which is why I've held it so dear to my heart for so long. And for the longest time as a kid, when you're like, for lack of a better term, forced to do something, you always kind of have this like resentment, like, damn, why do I got to do this every day? But as I've gotten older and at the age I am now, and all that I do with my career, like, all of those years stuck in the gym as a kid is so instrumental into my learning process and things that I can draw upon. Even just seeing the way that you interacted with actors back in the day, I have to credit to why I'm successful in being able to train actors now, is because it's not something new to me. I've been around this. I've seen what you have to do when you take a blank slate and you have a limited amount of time to try to make them look good. You know, to take someone that's a dancer and make them look like Bruce Lee, the most iconic martial artist of our generation, is crazy. You know, I don't know if I would want a task like that in this day and age, to be honest with you, because I'd be worried of people talking shit on me and judging me. So I'm glad you got to do that. I got it way easier. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, one of the best one I like was training Gina Torres.
Cleopatra 25-25.
25, and that's when I had you come, learn the art, how to do the teaching. You were teaching how to jump on the bag, spin up, kick off from there. Yeah. I mean, you know, just different little idea concept. That's the whole idea. I wanted you to experience it. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of the more fun things that I enjoy doing that.
100%.
You know, so, yeah, it was good, you know. Because I did a lot of behind-the-scene training. You know, like when I work a lot with Jeff LaMotta and Albert Leong. When they were doing different movies and stuff like that. Was a lot of times they didn't want to train people. They sent them to the studio, and I got to train them.
Real quick, shout out Uncle Jeff Amata, who has been so instrumental to my career. I have to thank you, because a lot of people assume that I work with James and Albert all the time. Jeff is one of the few people that I have had the incredible opportunity to shadow and be an assistant for on several movies. And honestly, I don't know if he would have trusted me as much if he didn't know where I came from. Obviously, I had to prove to him that I'm not an idiot and that I could do my job correctly. But, you know, clearly that door would not have been open if it wasn't for him having trained with you guys all the way back 30, 40 years ago. You know?
Yep. We all remain friends. We all were in the martial arts then. So many different things. His teacher, Danny Santos, you know, one of Bruce Lee's only top instructor, you know. So I've known these guys forever, you know, way back there before all this movie stuff started going on. So that's why, you know, they're all your uncles.
Yeah.
You got to know many of these people, you know. So that was a way of you growing up, but you know, I'll just introduce you to a lot of different people, you know. John Saxon, that was another guy that I used to see all the time. We worked together for quite a few different projects. And, you know, so it was great, you know. So, yeah, there was a lot of people that we met. I got to travel, you know, got to go to Australia to teach. Had students all the way down Mexico and Israel, Africa, everywhere, you know. It's been a great journey.
Yeah. And we touched on it briefly earlier when you mentioned having to learn the healing arts from one of your instructors. But I think one of the things that is most often overlooked in the martial arts that you had always been really big on was not just the external, but also the internal side of things. I remember back in the days when we had the early gyms, not only did you have like massage classes and working on resetting stuff and helping people, but you also had meditation classes and Qigong classes, which even to this day are not very widely accessible to a lot of people in the public and around the world. And so I remember distinctly, you know, as a kid being very aware of energy and the ability that you had to draw it upon within yourself and to manipulate it. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't even think is real until they've experienced it themselves. And so how did you get into the internal side of things initially?
I was studying under Grandmaster Shir K. Liu.
Okay.
And later under Grandmaster Do Wei.
Yes.
And Dr. Ming. It was through Dr. Ming, I studied acupuncture with him. It was through Chinese history. His family was the first one to do acupuncture.
Yes, through their lineage.
So through him, so it was like 99 generation in his family, where a lot of these new people now is like 1-2 generation, that's all. But through history, it's his family that started the acupuncture. And so I was going to get my license on him, but he passed away, got hit, car crash accident, and he died from the injuries a couple months after that. And so he was part of the acupuncture board that issued the license. So we were hoping to get ours, but after he passed away, I didn't want to study anymore because there was no one else that was as good as him.
Yeah.
So I gave up that concept. But I stuck with what I learned from Shir Liu and Do Wei, and also Shi Hong Shi was another teacher from Taiwan. And he taught me more about working with the joints and stuff like that. But we also learned the concept of the energy of moving the chi, the life force inside your body. I taught you guys that when you guys are young. You guys, as kids, were moving energy already.
Yeah.
Doing some healing, taking away headaches and stuff from different students and stuff like that. Because you are born with the energy, but you have to learn how to manipulate it and control it and use it focus for healing. Because in the Bible, they said Jesus did with the healing hand. It was the energy that he was using. This is the same concept. So it's not just he was the only one, but everybody's capable of doing it. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have the knowledge of how to use it, how to manipulate it, it's not going to do you any good. But a lot of times my teacher, Sher Lu, he was healing people with different type of cancer. He could do it. He was strong. I remember one time it was Tia. She had we were at a demonstration. She was not feeling good at all. Had all this problems with her stomach and stuff like that. She was in pain. And she came and told me that. And Sifu Lu was happening to be sitting next to me. He said, "Oh, come here." And he just waved his hand a couple of times and just took everything away. She was fine as can be. Yeah. Because he knew how to manipulate the energy. So the whole thing on the concept of the energy is, even with the acupuncture needles, you have to turn it a certain way, either putting energy into the body or reversing it, pulling the energy out. But pain is either overabundance of energy or underabundance. So you have to learn how to use that concept. And then it depends on different points. But some of the points that you have, you may have a pain in your leg, but you have to use the acupuncture point along the back, along the side of your arm or in the neck. So it's different corresponding because you have 12 meridian points in the body. And they either used for healing or 36 of those points are used for killing.
Deadly, yes.
So so that's what you have to learn. But not too many people are teaching that concept about the dim monk,
yes,
about the killing aspect. A lot of teachers kept that for themselves because they didn't want that concept to really go out there.
Yeah.
There are a few people that still know it, to teach it, but mainly it's for the healing aspect. But the Chinese art is not just for fighting. Fighting is just a byproduct of the art. The whole thing is health and healing, slowing down the aging process inside the body. Because the Chinese believe in working all the organs of the body. In the Western world, they're always talking about cardio, about the heart only. Mm-hmm. The Chinese, they go to the meridian points working the kidneys, gallbladder, your liver, your heart, everything, the lungs. So you work on different areas. So that's why the concept of the Tai Chi, when they do the movement, is to make the energy flow throughout your body so that you continue to have flexibility as you get older. So you can have the concept of slowing the age process inside. Because once you get older, a lot of the problems, what happens is the organs are dying out inside. That's what the Chinese concept is trying to slow that down.
Yeah.
Trying to keep the energy flowing in and keep it like it's young.
Yeah, a lot of people, they just don't think that it's real. And to be fair, there are a lot of fluky videos out there where people are doing some wonky stuff going on. But I was always exposed to some very crazy stuff. I remember having some guests come by and go into certain things where we'd see people do the knockout points, where they just go and tap a meridian point and guys are just getting knocked out. Not falling down and being a part of the act, but literally getting just KO'd instantaneously to the point where they have to get revived and brought back,
Yes.
Yeah.
You got to see a lot of that from some of the teachers, and also our friend Wally J. Mm-hmm. He had his son Leon come down and do a demonstration at the school.
Yep.
And it was showing a lot of different things, So all the concepts are there. They are for real, Some of it now is just that it's gotten out of hand. There's too many where they said they're trying to touch you without touching you.
Yeah, trying to hit you like this. Yeah,
knock out energy. So a lot of these guys that used to do the good stuff, but now they're considered flakes.
Yeah.
Like George Dillman.
Yeah.
When he first did it, he was doing the real stuff.
He was knocking people out. Yeah.
And now it's a whole different thing. He's the laughing stock of it now. And there's so many different other teachers out there that you see on YouTube. It's crazy, and it makes the art look bad.
Yeah.
So that's why you got to be That's why I said what we teach is a whole different thing. It's not for showing off. It's just trying to heal. From the last 10, 12 years now, I have so many students down there, are doctors, chiropractors, that are using the art that I'm teaching them. They want me to go back down next year again because they have classes down there. They're waiting for me to come show them the different concept ideas. And so they have helped heal so many people. That's the whole thing. Some of them help their grandmothers, their uncles, and just different people all over. It's what we're here is to learn a purpose of helping people. If we can help them along in their life, ease the pain what they have through either meditation or through the healing hand or massaging or realigning the bones. I mean, it's crazy. One time they took me down to Guadalajara, Mexico. One guy had an injured wrist. I looked, I said, well, what happened to your wrist? He said, I injured hitting. So I told him, come over there. So I reset the whole thing, pop, 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 boom, boom, and set it up. And then he was fine. Next thing I know, 65 guys in a row that wanted to get digested. It was crazy. So that's why I start teaching the classes, and they had me go down quite a few times down there, teaching Puerto Vallarta and Rosarita into different area, Mexicali, And so I've gone down there and have quite a few guys, or doctors, or chiropractors, or nurses, whatever. I worked on different guys on baseball pitchers down there, soccer players, and so forth. And some of them, these injuries are 20 years old. Yeah. And here I have to try to break and realign it. It takes forever for old injuries. Yeah. The whole concept of healing is if you have an injury, if you can get to it within the first 5 to 10 minutes, you can put everything back in place. It's natural flow, and then you can go out there and continue on. Like when you guys were in high school. Yeah. Mom and we used to be like the team doctors. On the girls' basketball team, or you brought guys from the swim team or the track. Yeah. Everybody was coming. Football team. We worked on them. That's the whole idea. Yeah,
I remember one of my friends, Jason Lavelle, one of the quickest dudes in track back in the day when we were going to Junior Olympics. He pulled his hamstring, and we had Junior Olympics like a week later, and we're like, oh, great. And we worked on him. We gave him herbal medicine, the Dit Da Jiao, and he went out there and he won a week later, competed at Junior Olympic Games.
Yep, because a lot of people don't understand that hamstring injury, a lot of people, they try to re-stretch. You can't stretch it. It's already overstretched. Yeah. So the idea is when we put you against the wall, we push and press on it. We
compact it,
unpack it, pull it back into it, so realign it again. Yeah. So that's what a lot of people don't understand the concept. So once I start teaching that to different people down there in Mexico, they love it because they get all those guys that are injured, because a lot of guys are into mixed martial arts down there. Yeah. And so I work with a lot of those guys also. And so that's what we try to do. What different ideas are working on. But some of these guys, even the basketball players, man, I can get in there and help them right now. Some of these, Lakers and stuff, need it. They're out for so long. They don't need to be out that long. But with the medicine, the herbal medicine, the jiao, it will cut the healing process down to a third or a half. Yeah. So where the Chinese concept is, when you're injured, depending on your age, if you're 37 years old, it's going to take you 37 days to heal naturally. But if you can take the herbal medicine and apply it, so then it may cut it down to half that time period or even more. And so that's what you're looking at. And plus, the medicine will help strengthen and make it stronger than it was before. Yeah. That's what you're looking at.
So I'm going to ask this, and if we need to, we can cut around this and leave it out if it's too touchy of a subject. But I remember when I was a young kid and I was around maybe 9 to 11, I was being taught on a lot of internal stuff like that and a lot of the breathing exercises and certain regimens and stuff like that. And I want to say that there was some instructors or friends that had the ability to levitate.
Yes.
And that's something that a lot of people do not think is real. And I remember as a kid distinctly being told that if I was able to train this at a certain age and I committed to it, that I could potentially have the ability to do that. I'm going to be honest, I didn't commit to it. I didn't pull it off. But the realm of possibilities is that there are some instructors out there that can manipulate things in a way that they can actually levitate.
Yes, they can. Sherry Lu was part of it. Xu Hong Shi was another one. These guys, in fact, they offered to teach it to you.
Yeah, I know.
And go away.
I know.
And what it is that you have to learn these exercises before you start having sex.
Yeah. They were sending me videos, I remember, as a kid.
It's all sexual energy. That's why they say a lot of times you have to learn it before you're the age of 12.
Yeah.
After that, it's hard to do. By the time I learned it, I can do it because I was way past my prime at that time period. Because you was one of the exception, and one of my other students, Jimmy Brown, was what they wanted him to learn it, but he just couldn't concentrate on it.
Yeah.
So I mean, you had the concept of they wanted to teach you. You could have been one of the greatest guys.
It's one thing that I distinctly remember and look back on. I'm like, damn, that would have been a cool party trick. But yeah, I remember seeing these videos that they would send to me on like a weekly basis, and I would have to copy the exercises, and it was crazy. Like it definitely, the things that I was able to accomplish in harness, I've always for a long time felt tapped into something greater. I remember, I don't need to get into it too deep here, but even back when I was a kid, I remember you guys always telling me that I had three imaginary friends, so to speak, that were with me at all times, to the point where like when I would get into the car, I would have to say like, whoa, hold on. Like, don't close the door. We got to get them in here. And what's crazy is that I feel like they were there for a reason, to like guide me on this journey and protect me. But then all of a sudden at a certain point, it just disappeared one day. And I don't know what it was that click that off. I don't know if it was an age thing or an energy thing, or, I just got to the point where I was so disconnected from it, from being in the modern world. But I distinctly remember growing up just having access to a lot of stuff that a lot of my friends didn't understand conceptually. And that's one of the big regrets I have is not having harnessed it at the time when I probably should have.
Yes.
Yeah.
You had a chance, I mean, as you get older, sometimes you get disconnected. Even now, the things I used to do when I was younger, I can't do now.
Yeah.
Because I'm sort of disconnected from it.
Yeah.
So, sort of lost my way, I guess. There's certain concepts I still able to do, physically manipulating stuff. A lot of the internal stuff, I'm just not connected with it anymore.
Yeah. It happens. It's pretty crazy. And I have to ask, and again, we could cut this out if it's too touchy of a subject, but the idea of astral projection is something that a lot of people have heard about, but I don't know if they believe it's real as well. And for those that I'm talking about, it's the ability to essentially, in my novice opinion, to essentially leave your body and to visit other places, if that makes sense.
Yes. I used to do that a lot when I was younger. When we first opened up in 73, I used to teach the meditation classes. And from there, for the first 3-4 schools that I had, and when we had the meditation classes, I put them in a circle and we do the breathing drills and so forth. And then we all hooked our minds together, one mind, one breath. And when I used to astral project, I used to take the whole classroom with me. And we go to different areas. And then I wouldn't tell them where we're going. And then after I bring them all back in, we come back, and then I started asking, okay, now describe where we were.
Saw, yeah.
And they were all surprised, and they were all seeing the same thing, because I was taking them to different areas of green gardens or valleys and stuff like this. And so it was a concept that they didn't understand, and they said, wow. And so a lot of my people, they still do some of the astral projection. That they did learn from me. And so it was a concept of doing that. And then there was other points where that was good energy, but there's also the bad, the evil.
Yeah, you can get lost.
Different styles, what's called Maosan,
yeah,
where you worship like the devil or the black magic or the black spirit. And that's a whole different crazy thing altogether.
Yeah.
And so we had demonstration where the guys did, they put incense in their mouth, 12 of them burning, no effects to them. Put fire on themselves, no effects to it. It was just all part of that realm. And when my teacher told me, said, don't learn that style is dangerous for you. That's going to destroy your whole idea of life. So I sort of got away from it, but I wanted to see what it was like. And so I did see a lot of that, understand the concept. There is the good or the white magic, and there's the black magic.
Yeah.
So you have to understand that. So there are people that practice the black magic of it all.
Yeah, and a lot of people, for a lot of them, it just seems so far-fetched that they won't believe it. But I even have a real-life example where one of my good friends can attest to this, and that's why I tell this story, because he can vouch for this firsthand. I'd say 2009, I moved into an apartment with a good friend of mine named Andrew Ng, and at the time, Andrew had become obsessed with meditation and energy and all kinds of training, to the point where he was probably overdoing it, to be honest, and opening up portals and things that he probably shouldn't have been doing. He was doing it late at night and just in his room and going on these crazy journeys. And it got to the point where we started to feel a sense of danger in the house. Like he started to sense bad stuff where he couldn't sleep. And we were just like, there's something just not right here. And we invited you over to the house, but you had never even been to our house before. And we were just having dinner. And then I remember at a certain point, you just like closed your eyes, and you just went and like closed your eyes. And Andrew looked at me and he's like, what's going on? I'm like, just shut up. And you opened your eyes a few minutes later and you're like, it's cool. Don't worry. Like, things will be okay in your room right now, but you got to be careful about what you're doing. And you can't, I remember you said something like the way that his bed was positioned in front of his window, in front of the mirror. And you said something about it. And we looked at each other like, how the fuck did he know that's where the bed was? You haven't been inside the room yet. And at that point, that's when Andrew was like, okay, I'm a believer. I need to chill out. And I remember that story very distinctly having an impact on him and myself, being like, okay, well, we can't do that, but we've seen that it's possible. So that's cool.
Yep. Remember Andrew? Was he still studies?
Yeah.
Still in contact with me.
Yeah.
He took it to the next level. He stuck with me, everything I showed him. And then when he went to China to learn more.
Yeah. Now he's doing acupuncture and massage therapy, right. Changed his whole career and life path. Yep. Getting into the healing side of things is crazy.
Yeah. He's always thanking me for opening it up to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Andrew was very serious with that.
Yeah.
One of the very serious ones that I had. So.
Yeah, 100%. He probably should have been one of the dudes to learn when he was a kid, to levitate. He probably would have stuck it out, to be honest with you. He
would have done it, definitely. He had the concept for it.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, like, over the course of your career, like, obviously, we've talked on the surface level of so many things that have happened. Is there one singular thing that you're most proud of in your contribution to the martial arts? At this point in time, you're very well respected. You've been inducted into Inside Kung Fu Hall of Fame, Martial Arts Hall of Fame, tons of accolades and awards, and tons of people in the traditional martial arts world still respect and honor your name. Is there one thing that you want to be known for legacy-wise, or one thing that you're most proud of, I guess, over the duration of your martial arts journey and career?
I really can't think of any one concept. The most thing I'm proud of is probably of the books, the videos, DVDs that I put out there. Because I still hear from different people from around the world how it has helped them to open up their world, even though they didn't stick with my particular style, because it was just a concept that they got out and explored martial arts altogether. So I still get hundreds of letters every year regarding that and about the books and how it opened up their mind and different things like that. But I just enjoy teaching. That's my whole thing. That's all I like doing now, is just going down, teaching people different ideas, concepts about the healing and different things. And there are some guys that want to learn more about the fighting aspect. I'll start working with them probably next year, to give out some of the ideas while I'm still alive and kicking. Yeah. Because just don't teach at the school anymore doing that kind of concept. So, a lot of this stuff I just sort of put in the shelf, not to teach all the conditioning and stuff like that anymore.
100%. And now we've talked about a lot of the things of where you've come and things that you've accomplished. And this is a question that I always leave everyone with. I usually ask people, like, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Where do you see yourself 10 years from now? But I'll leave it a more open-ended on you. Like, what do you see for yourself in the future? Is there anything else left to accomplish at this point? Or do you think that you've checked off the majority of things that you would like to accomplish in the martial arts journey and stuff like that?
I'm pretty well done well in all the martial art aspects that I wanted to do now. It's just mainly just want to be a consultant to different people. Okay. Different people they're always asking me about different ideas, how it was back in the old days. How can I teach this way? How can I introduce this to different concepts. That's why I work with different organizations like the Whipping Willow Association. I usually go down there every year and teach classes, different concepts and ideas, to show them what is open there. But what I like about the organization, they have what's called, I forget what's a master's teaching. So we'll get like 6 different instructors. They would teach, this is the way we do it in Kenpo, this is the way we do it in this Kung Fu, this is the way we do it. And then I would do it. Because I always have a different approach to it. Yeah. Because my style system, I try to do it more of a female approach.
Yeah.
In other words, if you can use a male technique with female approach of it, you can make it stronger and easier. It's not so much of a hard concept because a lot of the males that get strong over an ability that
they rely on strength too much.
They just pure strength is not more of leverage and the physical, but the
technique of it.
Technique of why, because the female will never be equal to the male strength wise.
Yeah, just
but
from
you
an
have
anatomical
to use the
standpoint.
concept of how to do it, how the balance is done. How, like they say, 1 ounce can display 1,000 pounds. So that's the way I try to do it. So a lot of my concept is much easier to use. So the male, if you have that strength of the male strength of the female technique, you're going to make it even stronger and faster. So that's why I try to do it. So, because a lot of guys, they try to teach the female the same way as they teach the male. You can't do it that way. Yeah. It doesn't work. They don't have the same muscle structure, body structure, so forth, but they have the mind.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
100%. Yeah, I see that all the time where, like you said, your system has always been known as even from self-defense tactics and stuff that we did growing up, it was always taught to me that, if you can do it with pure technique, then when you actually have the strength, you can actually, it's even more powerful of a concept, but you have to have the foundational technique of it and be precise and be accurate and actually know what you're doing as opposed to just forcing it with brute strength. Right. So, 100%. Man, it's crazy. This has been a trip for me to sit down and just get some of your oral history down on tape so that we could have this not only for myself, but, for little Takashi or, your grandson, so that he could watch this, when he finally is old enough to understand what the hell's going on. But, on behalf of myself, I'm trying not to get caught up here, but I have to thank you for everything you've done for the martial arts and for myself. For the longest time, I've always tried to not be in your shadow. It's tough. You've accomplished a lot, so I have to thank you for setting the groundwork for everything I've achieved. So,
well, you're my son. I wanted to pass on everything I could to you. That's the whole idea. So when you have your kids and stuff, you can pass it on to the next generation. Yeah. Even in your stunt work or whatever you do, that's the whole idea is play it forward.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea. So, that's all we can do in this world is continue. Yeah. Continue the idea. So the next generation, the generation after us.
Yeah. I just hope that I can accomplish 1% of what you have. Everyone looks at JAM as this amazing thing that I've accomplished and I built. And it's just, it's a gym. I'm just lucky that people come here and pay money and continue to walk through the doors. And I have some amazing friends and colleagues that continue to help push it and thrive it, But when I look back and think of it, all this groundwork was set from the tough beginnings that you had financially and growing up in a time where it wasn't accepted to do what you did. And, when I look back on it, it's I'm going to try my best to just continue to, push the legacy of our family. So.
Yes. I guess that's why I wanted to teach because I didn't want to have a dull life.
Yeah.
I wanted to see you kids every day. That's why we had the school. Saw you guys every day. We worked together, and it's like parents, they say, well, we never saw our kids, or we never saw my dad. He's always working all the time. Well, we worked at the studio. You guys were there. The ideas I had, I had you guys share in it. That's the whole idea. So, like I said, you'll never have a dull life the way that you were brought up and trained-wise and so forth. And same thing, you don't have a dull time at all. Yeah. You're always constantly moving, always going. people can't believe what you do because you can do it all.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea, but you can multitask. A lot of people can only do one thing. They can only concentrate on one thing, and that's it. But life takes you to many ways, so you got to be able to adapt to it. So adopt everything that you want to do, and you just continue.
Well, like I said, I don't get to say it too often. So, on behalf of myself and everyone in the martial arts community, we thank you for everything you've done. And I hope that this is just one small part of your oral history that people will be able to look back upon and, just really appreciate everything that you've done and everything you contributed. And here's to many more years and hopefully me being able to continue that for the rest of time. So before we get out of here, can you just look into this camera? And this is going to be a unique one because mostly this is where I tell people to shout out their Instagrams. And I know that's something that you don't necessarily have. But if you want to, if there's any way that people can keep in touch with you, whether that's online or via email or something like that, just look at that camera and tell people how they can do so.
You can reach me. My email is Douglas, WNG@yahoo.com. And I'm on Facebook. I got a couple websites on there. White Lotus Kung Fu Martial Art Association, Douglas Wong, it's Facebook, I think it's 503, and also Life and Legacy of Douglas Wong. So there's 3 different Facebook sites you can check it out.
Perfect. Yo, guys, with that being said, please be sure to hit that like button, comment, subscribe for brand new episodes each and every week. Join us every Monday for Jam Breakdowns and every Friday for brand new JAMCast, interviewing influential members of the Mimi community like my dad, Mr. Douglas Lim Wong. So with that being said, guys, I got to give one more very special shout out. Thanks for coming through, Dad. I really appreciate your time.
Appreciate you having me.
And as always, guys, coming through, I'm your host, Travis Wong. Thanks for joining us here on another JAMCast. Until next time, we'll see you all soon. Peace.